serious topic just before the holidays. So we're going to try and keep it relatively light. I'm fortunate to have with us today someone from CoinDCX, India's first crypto unicorn. Meenal has been with in the startup space for the longest time now. So good to have you here today with us. Meenal, probably a quick introduction before we get started on your experience. And I can almost call you a crypto veteran now. You've spent like long enough, I guess. Probably a quick intro.
Sure. Thank you, Yash and team for having me. Always a pleasure to talk about learnings from our journey. Yeah, so a quick background about myself. Yeah, as you rightly mentioned, have been sort of quite active in the startup space for almost a decade now, give and take. Um, have been part of multiple entrepreneurship student bodies, have been part of multiple founding teams, have done a couple of ventures by myself. And of course, the most recent one has been CoinDCX. I think, when I was sort of in the investment space with my previous job, that's when I hopped upon crypto and blockchain as an industry. Not being a technologist, right? It took
Right.
me a little while to understand, how is this different from internet. But after spending like a good couple of months, once I sort of quit that job, I realized that broadly, I think, there are two potential big disruptions which can happen in the industry or with crypto. One is, I think, the way in the global financial ecosystem, the way we store value, the way we transfer money, right? That is going to fundamentally get disrupted, right? And I think we will have today we have local sort of fiat ecosystems. We will also have a global currency layer, right, which is over the internet. And I think that is something as we are seeing that is happening. And second is, I think the kind of internet that we interact with today is also being disrupted as we speak, right? Like decentralized financial world sort of ecosystem, the NFT ecosystem, right? You are for the first time you are able to sort of own things on internet and you are able to transfer that, right? Till now, internet was all about data and information. We are now moving towards internet of value. So yeah, that's when I decided that let's professionally be active in crypto now. And I think it's been 3.5 years. And with specific to CoinDCX, it's been 2.5 years. And I primarily lead growth, strategy, and analytics verticals at CoinDCX. I think I joined in when we were a small team of 13, 14 folks, Series A funded, $18 million company, to today about a 300 member team strong and still growing. And as you rightly mentioned, sort of, we have gone 50x in terms of valuation over the last 2.5 years. Yeah, I still think these are early days of crypto in India, right? So looking forward to more action.
Did you still get questions around is crypto all a fad or is this for real this time? What's your sense?
Yeah, I think, and that is sort of quite fair, right? Because uh, if you think about crypto, it has been a very social and community led evolution, right? Wherein, and then when we think about evolutions which are primarily very social and community led, right? Out of things like someone made like queries which are around price movement, right? Or agendas around price movement versus, let's say, Matic did 5x better than Ethereum in terms of transaction per second. The price movement ones sort of,
Yep.
always take the major attention, right? Which is where I think it is a little difficult, right? It's a fundamental change, right? Till all this while we have been interacting or we have been in a world where we have been trusting intermediaries to enable trade between us. If I have to buy a product, I trust Amazon. If I have to send an email, I do it via Google or Gmail, right? And so on and so forth. If I have to send money, I use a bank, right?
Yep.
Now we are entering into a world where, for the first time, um, that trust will be fundamentally in the technology, right? Not any centralized party in the network, right? So I think that takes time to absorb, right? I think for me itself, it took me a couple of months, right? So yeah, I definitely get a lot of, a lot of sort of FUD around, does crypto actually have a future, right? Is it legal
Right.
and whatnot? But I
Yeah.
think, people who sort of spend some time in these space, maybe talk with people who are already in this space. And I think most importantly, actually experience the blockchain or the crypto world, right? So my aha moment, right, as we call it in the product world, my aha moment was when I sent 100 rupees of worth of Bitcoin back in 2016 to one of my friends, and I realized I did not use any intermediary. and that transaction was done within a few minutes, right? That's when I realized the power of the space. I think,
Absolutely.
that's where we sort of live with, or we try to promote this movement called try crypto, right? Even if you don't buy, just come on board on crypto and experience the ecosystem once. I think that's when, people or folks will start realizing the value of crypto.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? I think even today, if you really have to send money to someone in the US in the traditional banking system, I'd probably have to fill 5 different forms, and it takes me at least 48 to 72 hours to just get the money sent, and so much transaction fees, while I can just like
Yeah,
quickly send
exactly.
it in a matter of couple of seconds here, right? And you also made a great point about trust, right? Especially when you're dealing with money, and people's money always comes with a lot of trust, right? And in the early days, when obviously CoinDCX still didn't have a brand to rely on, and crypto was still in its nascency, and not a lot of people understood what's going on. And when you started building this exchange, how did you go about attracting that first million users? Was that like the more difficult ones in the last 3 years? How would you look at it?
Yeah, I think absolutely right. If you think about 2017 and 2000, sort of 18, early 18, right? Or I think actually the entire 18 till actually March 19, when we actually saw till March 20, actually, right, where RBI Supreme Court actually came out and invoked or removed the RBI ban. I think the sentiment was quite negative overall in these space, right? I mean, I still remember picking up CoinDCX as sort of a new startup I want to work with, and everybody in my circle, my friends and family was like, this guy is mad. I don't know what he's doing, right? So I think those were sort of, in terms of overall market sentiment and the way people perceive crypto was a difficult time, right? And I think but I think, in those tough situations in bear markets, because those are sort of the testing times, what you build, sort of provides you a very strong foundation for growth moving forward, right? And I think we never look back, right? Because one of the core ethos in the team is that we believe in the future of crypto, right? It's not about just build an exchange, make a quick buck, as a business and sort of move on, right? It's about try to pass on the benefits of crypto to Indian and maybe global users as we grow, or as crypto sees adoption moving forward. So there were two phases, right? In the early phase, one was when I had joined in. We were at max a few 10,000, tens of thousands of users, right? And then the first thing, which is very important before putting on a growth strategy, is to understand at what stage you are as a business, right? Have you find a product market fit, right? If you have found a product market fit versus you haven't, your strategies would be very different. If you are in the early stage of your startup journey and you haven't find your product market fit, you would try to identify a very specific consumer persona, and you
Right.
will try and solve one specific problem for that cohort and only focus on that, right? But once you have achieved product market fit, right, which we can talk about as to how do you realize and how do you measure. Um, but if you have that confidence, once you have that confidence, you sort of definitely double down on consumer personas which are working for you, and you start identifying new consumer personas to realize more user growth. Right? I think that's what we did. The moment I joined in CoinDCX, I spoke to a lot of users, did multiple surveys, and realized that we had a strong product market fit, and we were actually solving a genuine problem, which was primarily two. Right, one is, can I simplify buying selling of cryptocurrencies with INR, and second was, can I provide a end-to-end crypto trading solution to Indians, right? Where you can buy, sell not only with INR, but you can also interact with all crypto to crypto products. And with that, we doubled down on, the consumer persona that was working for us. Launched a referral program, because, in an industry like crypto where trust is inherently very important, right? And you are dealing with the money. Traders are trading with their real money. I think a referral was also a very important lever, right? So essentially doubling down on what was working, consumer personas, then experimenting with new consumer personas, and sort of driving virality and referral. I think these three sort of buckets worked really well for us.
Understood. And I know hack is may not be the right word, but any growth hacks from early days in that 0 to 1 journey that you remember that really went like a hockey stick kind of a thing?
Sorry about that. I think uh, I think one of the biggest growth hacks for us has been the entire referral program, that I spoke about, right?
Hmm?
Um, So there are two sides to it. One is how do you, so there are three broad channels, three, four broad channels, the way we think about the top of the funnel, right? You have marketing users, which is your influencer marketing, your affiliates, entire performance marketing, right? Influencer, affiliates, performance ads, Google, Facebook, etc. Then you have organic, and then you have referral. I think marketing was very tough to crack in the initial days because of a lot of restrictions around crypto advertising. So we primarily focus on organic, and we did a lot of education. I think one hack for us has been the entire DCX Learn as an awareness program in crypto, right? Where we try to educate people about crypto and try to educate them about how they can start their crypto journey. Right? I think that sort of built a very wider base of high intent users who can potentially convert into crypto users tomorrow. Because I think one was DCX Learn. So we, instead of thinking of growth just from acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue, we still think of it like awareness, acquisition, and then till revenue, right? So we think of it as
Makes sense.
3 A's and 3 R's rather than 2 A's and 3 R's, essentially, right? So awareness, I think, has been very important for us because the insight is, we are not just building our business, we are creating an industry. We are
Yeah.
bringing in crypto to India, right? So that was one. And second was, as I said, the referral piece, right? Once you have a once you have users who have been using your product, who have been trusting your product with their money, with their trading for a good amount of time, they become advocates for you, right? And it is unrealistic to expect users to sort of refer by themselves, right? This is, you have to be deliberate in marketing, right? That's marketing 101. And we sort of experimented multiple times, understood what incentives will work for but existing users versus who are coming in. And after multiple iterations, we were able to crack referral programs which were at peak, giving us 50 to 60% of daily signups.
Wow. Very interesting. So all of that entire awareness building journeys also helped you build trust in that early adopters kind of a community, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, uh, uh, and while we were building, right, because crypto is by itself a very transparent and a very open sort of ecosystem, right? We always had this user first mindset to building our product roadmaps, and so on and so forth. I shall remember, right? We would organize a small community meetup, small user meetups, right? We would do a lot of surveys. Everybody in the team will sort of talk to users, right? Go through each and every feedback that we receive in detail before we jot down the feedback, right? Because as I said, in that initial stage, right, when you have achieved the product market fit to you sort of pushing the pedal on the growth, you really need to double down on what's working for you, right? And I think this has been one of the most, I would say, uh, most important principles for us, right? And I think this is very important for every startup. Yes, you keep experimenting, you keep finding new ways to grow, new personas, new acquisition channels, and so on and so forth. But like, you have to be ruthlessly aggressive with what's working for you. And I think that's the word I would use, right? Because if you do not double down on what's working for you, someone else will take that market share, right? So
Yep.
I think that is a principle which we still live by, right? So like, never compromise on what's working for you, and as I said, be ruthlessly aggressive. I think that's the word.
Yeah, I think this is something that I'm also going to use in my business for sure. The great fan of this principle in general, but we may not be ruthlessly aggressive yet. I'm definitely going to use that one for sure. But fast forward to 2021, right? Last 12 to 15 months, I don't think any of us would have probably predicted the kind of
Oh
explosive
yeah.
growth that all of us have seen, right? And like what tens of millions of investors onboarded into the crypto world in the last 12 months. How's it been like for you? You've been like pretty much at the forefront of it, right?
Yeah, I think this has been, I think, as I said, since March 20, right, when we sort of uh, had the support from Supreme Court, and they clearly coming out and telling the ecosystem that invoking a ban on the RBI, or a ban invoked by RBI on the banking piece is not the right way to move forward, right? Indians have the right to sort of try and be part of new technological revolutions, right? And I think that was sort of the turning point, March 20. And since then, I think last 1.5 years to maybe 18 months have been 20 months have been quite crazy. As you rightly said, about tens of millions of users have at least tried crypto, right, in India. and of course grateful to sort of be at the forefront and be sort of one of the biggest spies in that at CoinDCX. I think along with experimentation plus being ruthlessly aggressive, this is also a principle which has helped us brilliantly over the entire journey, which is timing, right? So if you time your efforts at the right time, and you have the right inputs um, when the market sentiments are absolutely on top, the ROI can be even 5x, 10x to wrong timing scenarios. I think timing also matters a lot, and I think that's what we did since March 20. We were like, as I said, let's go all in with what we have, what's been working, and keep experimenting, keep trying new things, but no compromise on business as usual. And yeah, I mean, lo and behold, I think things have been quite great for us, right? Let's talk maybe a few numbers. So today we are sitting at about 7.5 million users, which have grown 75x within the last year.
Wow.
The rate at which we are growing, we might end up at about 50 billion by end of next year, right? Talking about, I think, but I think registered users is a good indication not to highlight growth, but it is not a great metric to track when it comes to. It's more of a vanity metric, right? I mean, ultimately, growth is all about your users actually using the product value, which is where we also always think of, monthly transacting users, right? Maybe a year back or 15 months back, we were at about a few tens of thousands. Today we have more than 1 million monthly transacting users, right? Or maybe a little more than that now.
Wow.
And again, the rate at which we are growing, so 100x growth there again. And the rate at which we are growing, we can again, maybe at 10 million by end of next year, right? Like a 10x from here. And in terms of volume, in terms of, when I say volume, this is the total volume, that transaction volume that happens on the platform, right? So from about 8 to 10 million dollars a day a year back, today we are doing about $100 million. To be at at peak, we are also doing $150 million a day, which is about $3 to 4 billion of transaction volume in a month, right? So I think that's the kind of numbers we are seeing. That's the kind of growth we have been seeing. And as I said, with regulations, with the regulators also thinking about this industry as a space which they would want to regulate, right? They're having an open dialogue with the stakeholders. I think there's a lot to still grow from here. And with I think one of the biggest internet bases of the world, 700 million, right? Thanks to Geo and others, there's a lot of potential still, which we can leverage as we move forward.
It's absolutely phenomenal to see the numbers when you compare and contrast that with like traditional finance, right? Probably a lot of them would have taken decades to get to this kind of a scale that you've achieved in like the last 12 to 18 months. But my favorite part that I've seen a lot of other exchanges also sort of get inspired from is this basket of cryptos that you used to started giving out, right? Like 100 rupees of cryptos. And did that really help you activate users?
Oh, brilliantly. I think that is one of the most exciting innovations we have done in this space when it comes to acquisition strategy, right? In the last, let's say, 6 9 months or so. I think this is something which we ourselves pioneered. Yeah, just give me a second, please.
Sure. While we wait for Minal to come back, if there are any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box or the chat window. I see a few already coming through and we'll definitely take them in the next couple of minutes. Thanks for sending questions, Vikas and Asad. We'll just take them in a bit from now.
Sorry about that, Yash.
No problem at all.
Yeah, I think we were talking about yeah. So I think the thought was, so one of the triggers that we have seen in crypto is, of course, people, once people invest and once they are able to realize the price movement that they see in their portfolio, right? It sort of hooks them with the product. And I think this is sort of true for any fintech product, I would say, right? Equity, gold, etc. So with that sort of insight, right, we said instead of we expecting the user to do the entire journey, right? You come, you sign up, you complete your bank account verification, you deposit, and then you complete a purchase. If we can sort of give users some incentive there and try and maybe reduce the time to value. The value is building a portfolio and seeing those fluctuations. Uh, will that help us, activate users faster, right? Because the whole idea of the campaign was your first crypto or your trial of crypto is on us, right? You experience it with us, and then you would take a decision whether you would want to build a portfolio or not, right? And lo and behold, out of all the folks who sort of applied this, a coupon code or redeemed this, applied this coupon code actually, about 70 to 75% of them were coming back and redeeming it by actually making a deposit, right? So the redemption was not on sign up. You have to actually come on the product. So as soon as you sign up, we will give you the incentive, but you
Right.
have to complete your first purchase to make that balance yours.
Got it.
You will see it as a part of that portfolio, but it'll be locked, right? For
Yeah.
you to redeem, you have to make a transaction within the first month. And about 75% of people who applied that coupon code sort of made a direct deposit and actually tried crypto, right? Or actually purchased with their own money. So I think that was a brilliant activation sort of hack, uh, and even acquisition hack, which worked well for us. And the great part was that we attached the incentive to users using the product value, right? We
Interesting.
did not give free money on sign up, right?
Yep.
Indirectly we did, but you had to transact to make that 100 rupees part of your portfolio. And I
Yeah.
think that eventually reflected in our retention cohorts, right? Because the folks were coming in with the right intent. They were not just coming in for the free money, right?
Yep.
And I think, yeah, that was sort of a brilliant hack which has served us brilliantly over the last 8 to 9 months.
Plus, it lets you get these users off that initial hump, right? And like gets you that first transaction, how easy it is going to be,
Exactly, right.
how simple, all of that. Yeah.
As I said,
Phenomenal.
you reduce the time to value for users.
Yeah, that's a great point actually. And probably moving a little down the funnel, Nana, how do you think about engaging and retention of the users who've already transacted? What do the cohorts look like for you from an engagement standpoint? Would love to spend some time on that.
Great. So yeah, I think I'm a huge believer. Yes, acquisition is important, but don't want to quote, but I do believe that retention is a very important lever and maybe a more important lever than acquisition, right? In the long run, in the life cycle of a company, even if you are able to, and today at the scale we are at right now, even if we provide a 1% improvement in our retention numbers, right? For example, X people transacted last month, how many are transacting this month? If I can move that percentage by 1%, I'm talking about 50,000 to 1 lakh more transacting users, right? And if you compound this over months, over years, you're talking about phenomenal results if you just crack retention, right? The way I think about retention broadly is, I think retention is more like an output, right? So
Mhm.
retention is not something that you drive. Retention is the output that you see with sort of three primary inputs. One is activation, which is the NUX or the new user experience, right? As to how do you onboard your installed or registered user, and you take them to the first aha moment, right, where they first use the product for the first time, and you always try and minimize the time to value. Right? It's not just about conversion growth; it's also about taking the value of the product fastest. So the right one is activation. Second is engagement, right? Once they have built that sort of once they have used the product for the first time, right? Like yes, used Uber first time, I used Swiggy for the first time. How do I make sure as a a growth person that Yash and Minal keep coming back to use the product again and again, right? That's where your engagement piece starts. And I think of engagement also in sort of two phases, right? One is the initial habit forming phase, which is a little more deliberate, right? A little more pushy, right? Because you are trying to make sure that the user uses the value again and again, right? This is sort of called the habit momentum growth, which can be making a repeat purchase after the first purchase in first month. It can be for
Yep.
Uber, it can be two transactions in the first 1 month. For Confluence, it can be reading a document every week for the first 4 weeks, and so on and so forth. And then is your sort of midterm retention, right? When you are thinking about making sure that users are engaged with the product, they're transacting more, they are spending more time, and so on and so forth. Once they have built that habit,
Yep.
and then this is sort of the engagement bucket, and then people who do not continue engaging with you, right? You try to build levers which can resurrect them, or which can make them come back to the product, right? So essentially activation, engagement, and resurrection, these are the sort of three inputs. Now in terms of strategies across these three, I think all of these are a combination of growth, or marketing led plus product led, right? I think this is where product growth and marketing teams have to come together to drive all of these levers. Cannot be just sort of driven by one single function, I would say, right? So the way we think about that at Coin-D6 is, instead of having functions sort of driving this, we have pods driving this, right? So for example, activation pod will have a marketing person, a data person, a growth person, and a product person, right? The retention pod will have a growth person, a data person, and a CX person also, and a product person, and so on and so forth. And once you have built this, you sort of define, as I said, engagement or CLM led activities and product led activity, right? For example, for us, engagement can be education, clearing myths about crypto, sharing core knowledge and core content of crypto, sharing crypto news, sharing market alerts, driving more feature adoption, right? Hooks on the product can be more like more product led, where you're building features which make the users come back on the product. For example, the market alerts feature that we built, right? So you can set your own alerts, and those alerts will be triggered, and which will make you come back on the product, right? A PNL feature, right, which tells you about what is the ROI on the money that you have invested, right? So that sort of creates a hook, a pull from the product, and keeps attracting you back as a user. So yeah, I think that is, to sum it up, that is the sort of matrix, right? So you have activation, resurrection, engagement as input, and then you have product led and sort of growth marketing led initiative that you can work on, and then you define strategies in each of this bucket. And of course, within these bucket, you can also go deeper by building more personalized segments, by building more detailed segments. But I think that's sort of a broad outlook one can start with.
Got it. It's a great point that you made about the interlock between product-led interventions and product loops to the CRM team, and the two needs to be very closely working in conjunction, right? And I think that's a lot of people don't pay enough attention, because CRM can obviously only amplify the product loops that are core to the product as well, right? And it would be good to spend some time on the CRM part of it, in terms of the kind of impact that you've seen on some of these retention initiatives and all of that. How has like some of this marketing technology helped you drive retention per se? Any numbers that you're able to talk about, Minal, today?
Sure. So I think let's maybe talk about each of the inputs that we spoke about, right? I think if I think about activation, right? Activation is a piece wherein you're actually trying to onboard a user into crypto, right? It's not just about realizing or they making a portfolio. It's also about they using the product and sort of building that comfort with crypto, right? So I think channels around, be it push, be it email, I think that they have been quite helpful for us in terms of building that new user experience, where we provide the right education and information so that an investor can take an informed decision of whether they want to invest in a particular asset or not. Right. I think the kind of uplifts we have seen there is, if for example our maybe install to sign up would be typically about 50%, in with sort of these CRM journeys, we are able to push it to about 60%, 65%, right, as an example. And I think the similar sort of incremental growth applies on sign up to activation as well, right? So if 25% of my signups are getting activated, I'm able to push, by telling them more about crypto, by telling them that there is a reward or a portfolio waiting for them, right, across consistently for a few days. We are able to sort of lift that by 25 to 30, even 35% at times, right? Which is, if you look at from a conversion point of view, it might not look big, right? But if when you're talking about millions of installs in a month, every conversion matters, right? So you're talking about tens of thousands of more activated users on a daily basis, right? That's one.
Yep. Yep.
Second, I think, is engagement. I think engagement has been primarily helped us in driving two things, right? One is uh, engagement from a point of view as to how many sessions a user is having on the product and how much time they are spending on the product, right? As I said, driving core feature adoption and sharing education and news about crypto helps us create that mindset within users that this is the crypto destination for them now. And if they have to think about learning crypto, getting the news, get buying, selling, everything is sort of happening at a single place, which is CoinDCX. Again, I think for us, push notification has been the best sort of channel to reach out. And I think that is one of the reasons we work very closely with MoEngage, because I do believe, Yash, and this is not just for marketing purposes, but I do believe that, in terms of push notification, you are one of the best right out there. And
Thank
with
you.
these sort of, engagement pieces, driving more feature adoption, as I said, right? So if every feature that we launch, the sort of metric that we have is what percentage of MTU or monthly transacting user will adopt that feature, right? And with that, GTM, growth and marketing teams, growth and product teams work together and sort of drive that. And as I said, CLM plays a very important role. And I think the second most important part in engagement in CLM is customer segmentation, right? Which tools like marketing automation tools or these tools provide, because ultimately engagement is all about engagement, and even resurrection, they're all about personalization, right? So if I can provide that wow moment to my sort of customers, right, by being, I want to go in that detail wherein, reward for Yash is different from reward for Minal, right? Because I know what works for Minal and what works for Yash. And similar to that, if you're not consuming news, I will not share news. Minal is consuming news, I will push more news, right? If Yash is consuming more core crypto content, I will share more crypto content, right? So I think bisecting users into various consumer personas, depending on the behavior or the way they behave on the product, I think is a very important driver for driving personalization, right? So I think in terms of engagement, I think we have been able to uplift our MEUs drastically. We have been able to increase our session times, and with resurrection, which is where one of the key levers is a reward, right? So if I can reward my users who have not transacted for the last X days, they come back and transact again. And the second lever is diversification, right? Like sharing nudges, like, so let's suppose if Yash comes on the platform and already only invest in Bitcoin,
Yep.
I will share nudges like, people who have social nudges, like people who invest in crypto, 70% of them invest in Ethereum, right? I think, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
So those nudges sort of help us resurrect a lot of people. Net on all these engagement and resurrection inputs, we have been able to uplift our, let's say, 6 month retention in terms of transaction from about 30% to 35%,
Wow.
right? So you're
And
talking
each
about a
percentage
5%
point
increment.
makes a lot of difference at that level.
Absolutely. As I said, every 1% is 1 lakh monthly transacting users more for us, right? So we're talking
Got it.
about lakhs of monthly transacting user with this sort of incremental approach. And I think we are still building for this, right?
Yep.
Maybe a year from now, we would want our which the curves which are flattening now, we would want
Yes.
them to cover to smile curves, right? People who are staying with us to transact even more, right? So I think, yeah, we're still building for that, but I think I can definitely say that, in a 6 to 9 month window, we have been able to achieve very healthy retention rates, which are in the range of 30 to 35% monthly transacting.
Wow. It's great to see such a data-driven approach to the entire base, right? And you're actually focused on driving the transacting users and not vanity metrics like, okay, monthly active
Yeah.
user or like a DAU, MAU ratios and things like that, right? Speaks volumes about the kind of teams that you're building. On the metrics part of it, I see someone has a question around CAC for a transacting user. Is that something that you can comment on in terms of numbers?
What is your CAC for a transacting user? So I think we only measure CAC. We do not measure, I mean, of course, we have these numbers like cost per install, cost per registration, but I think the core CAC that we track is actually cost per activated customer. Activated customer is someone who completes a first purchase. And I think, it is of course a little on the higher range for every channel. It is different, but I think it'll be easily, I won't be able to share exact numbers, but I think it'll be easily a few hundreds of rupees.
Got it. Got it. And I think there's a follow-up question in terms of tier two cities recurrent users. So Asad has a question around what is seen in tier two cities is people use traditional unofficial brokerage system to start using the platform. These are the ones who are usually scared to invest post a dip, which is usually bear markets. And I think, I don't know if that's very specific to tier two, but I'm sure that's a more common phenomenon. But do you have any data about retention of users which are less aware of crypto but still investing?
I think this is where I have a very sort of an insightful story to share. Very recently, we were comparing our tier one versus tier two versus tier three versus tier four user cohorts and even portfolio values, right? What we ended up realizing was our retention cohorts are more or less the same, and they hardly change. In terms of portfolio value, yes, tier one will be a little higher, but the average or the median portfolio of tier two, tier three, tier four, tier five cities is more or less the same, right? Which kept us of course, thinking. And what we eventually realized when we sort of coupled these research with the marketing insights or the kind of users that we have been acquiring, what we realized is that crypto today is primarily exposed to a young audience, right? Like 70% of our users are 18 to 20, 18 to 35. And these are all digital first users, right? So they might not be even aware about the offline pieces, right? Which I was mentioning. They might not be even aware about sub broker networks, right? They are actually more comfortable. They are more digital first. And hence, for them to adopt crypto via app like CoinDCX is more easier as compared to someone who is used to traditional systems, right? So I think that's one. And as I said, the second is we have not seen huge differences in portfolio values, right? Which was quite an insightful one for us. But I think the idea there is, as I said, from tier three, tier four, tier five, I think everybody sort of trying crypto, starting small, right? I'm not talking about lakhs of rupees or thousands of rupees. I'm talking about a few hundreds of rupees of portfolio. But that is, I think, consistent across tier two, tier three, tier four cities.
Wow, very interesting to see that. And in terms of you know, advertising itself, Lokesh has a question around not being able to use words like crypto and Bitcoin in the ads copy or graphics. How do you run ads and market your product in that scenario?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think we always, as I said, we have always struggled with using, a few marketing channels for us. For example, Google, Facebook for crypto companies do not exist, right? So I think we really had to innovate in terms of how we think about marketing. And we had to also always keep finding new ways to acquire users. So the way I think about acquisition channels is not channels, right? So if I keep organic and referral aside, um, on the marketing bucket, right, I think of everything that you do more as a tactic rather than as a channel. Because what is working for you will not work after 9 months from here, right? Because everybody will get into it, and then the ROIs will start decreasing. Right? This is a classic case which happens with affiliates everywhere.
Yep, yep, yep.
So everything is a tactic there, right? So you keep innovating. So if affiliate is working for you today, great, double down, but at the same time find a new way to grow, right? Like okay, this macro influencers are working well for me, let's also try to work with micro influencers, right? Like micro influencers working for me and influencers have been also working for me, can I try maybe partnership with the channel, right? So keep on the performance side, keep innovating, keep finding new tactics to grow, and always keep building for organic and referral, right? As I think building organic will not only serve you in terms of user, but also serve you in terms of building a strong brand. And as I said, referral, undoubtedly or arguably, I think, in my opinion, a referral is one of the best acquisition tactics that you can use because it will provide you the highest ROI with the lowest input. And, your users will start selling the product for you, and sort of the network effect can really scale. I mean, I think with referral, your growth trajectory can completely change. Very similar to how Dropbox or Airbnb, how they have done in the past. So yeah, huge fan of referral.
Yeah, and obviously your retention cohorts are going to look so much more better with the referral cohorts, right? So
Exactly.
awesome. Anil has an interesting question here. how has your customer segmentation changed over each 10x growth phase, basically from 0 to 100K to million? And how does it look like for the next 10x from here?
Interesting. So I think in the early phases, as I said, right? So I think I would sort of think of it in terms of primarily three spectrums, right? One is the persona, right? What age, what city are we talking about? Second is average portfolio values, right? What kind of deposits are coming, what kind of amounts people are depositing and building portfolio. And third is at what frequency are they transacting, right? What kind of monetary value they are transacting with. I think in the initial phases of CoinDCX, you're talking about really like crypto maximalists or real believers of crypto who are primarily, from tier one, tier two cities, completely male, I would say, not even predominantly male, and transacting very frequently and have like really good portfolio sizes. This is like the very initial phase when we are talking about a few tens of thousands of users back in 2017, right? When I think 2017 and 18, right? And then, as I said, these are sort of very core people who were still in the space when the sentiment in the space were not so favorable. And then I think since March 20, our personas have sort of widened up brilliantly, right? So I think now, as I said, if tier one and tier two were 90% in 17, 18, it is only 50, 60% today, right? So around 30 to 40% is tier three, tier four, right? So if we were 95% male today, we are maybe not, I think around 75 to 80 male, right? So the female penetration has increased over the last couple of years significantly in crypto. Portfolio sizes have gone down drastically. As I said, there are a lot of people who are coming in and trying crypto for the first time, right? So portfolio sizes might have gone down. And I think the last is frequency, right? In terms of frequency, people who have been in crypto for a long, for a good amount of time, also start sort of trading rather than just investing, right? Very similar to how someone would think about equity. Shuru mein people just invest and see how it is going, but with time they also start, buying, selling more frequently. And I think that is what we are seeing with crypto also, right? So people who have been acquired in the last 1.5 months are more like investors, right? They invest and they hold, and of course they can keep buying more, they can keep diversifying more, right? But they're not traders, traders per se. So their frequency is lesser as compared to folks who were more core in early 17, 18.
Got it. Awesome. I think there's a more broader question around someone's been following blockchain for quite some time. Is this market still too early to get into from a product development standpoint?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think we are still, in the early phases of crypto and the blockchain sort of ecosystem revolution. I mean, if we even still think about most of the developments in the last couple of years, it has been primarily at a protocol level, right? Ethereum has been solving problems. Matic has been trying to scale Ethereum. More and more protocols in DeFi, right, which are trying to solve literally building the most fundamental blocks of finance, right? Which is, how do you do lending, borrowing? How do you do margin trading? How do you build stable assets, right? I think these are the sort of core financial legos which have been built in DeFi, and I think so on and so forth, right? Of course, there's a lot of hype in crypto which will make you feel, because it is a global community, right? It is a very open world. At times it might feel like you're too late to the party, but I think if you have to get into product development, even a blockchain engineer, or a core blockchain engineer, I think there is a lot which will happen in this space for the decades to come, right? So to answer that question in a nutshell, I don't really see that. As I said, crypto is still sort of, in that, maybe it has crossed that inflection point now, it has crossed that chasm now, but I think there is still a huge bunch of early majority and late majority which is yet to adopt crypto, right? And today, the way we think about crypto, adopting crypto is also different, right? I mean, tomorrow there will be a lot of applications will be used by a lot of folks, right? Which is still at a very early stage, right? Investing might have a lot of exposure, right? People who have tried crypto in some or the other. But if we talk about real life applications, I think we have a long way to go. So yes, I think, I still feel it's still early days to get into crypto and blockchain.
And on that topic of what's next for you and what's sort of coming up in the future, Asad, there's a question on DAOs and NFTs to Indian consumers? What do you think could be the biggest concern in terms of awareness aspects of marketing pipeline?
Just reading the question. Okay. I think, the core sort of ethos that we live with 26 is whatever is happening in the crypto space, sort of try and take that and expose users to that. Right? But at the same time, we also do not want to compromise on the quality of what we do, right? So today we know that we are solving for buying, selling, and storing and trading of cryptocurrencies, and we have been focused on that, right? But I think as the space evolves, we are more than happy to get into new areas of space, right? Can I also provide uh, decentralized dexes on platform, right, where people can trade in a decentralized fashion, right? Can I aggregate all of them also? Can I maybe build an NFT marketplace where people can buy and sell NFTs, right? Can I also think about building a protocol? I'm not sure if that will be best for the exchange, but what we can do in DAO potentially something maybe we'll explore in a year from here, right? Or maybe a few months from here. So I think the thought is we are very open to sort of um, keep growing as the ecosystem evolves, but at the same time do not really compromise on what's sort of working well for us and what we are trying to do as a value add in terms of um, beyond these new spaces and new initiatives, right, where we might get into NFT, we might get into DeFi, we might think about DAOs. I think what is also important is to keep building for core engagement and build for new products within crypto, right? Can we build, mutual funds of crypto? Can we build SIPs of crypto, right? I think those are also very core initiatives that we have been experimenting with and that we have sort of in the cooking already as well, right? So I think how can we make the existing product also more engaging, right? Because there are behaviors which we are used to, right? When it comes to, for example, SIP is a very classic behavior, right? Why can't we do SIP today in crypto? Right? I think that's a problem to be solved. So to basically answer the question, keep doubling down on, keep finding new initiatives when it comes to the crypto investing and the trading spectrum, and keep exploring for new spaces like DAO and NFTs. And I think with our DCX Learn as an education initiative, we will always have that leverage where we can make aware people 3 months ahead of before we do anything actually. So that awareness always helps us.
Lastly, taking a step aside, I mean, there's just so much happening in this space and like so much news and like a lot of information coming your way almost every day, right? How do you keep abreast of all of these happenings? What's like, where should we go to follow the, the in happenings, and what should be our primary source to catch up on all of these things, from your perspective?
Uh, I think this is something, to be honest, I personally also struggle with, right? And I think it's practically impossible to keep a track of everything what's happening in this space, right? I think so. What has worked well for me is like figuring out a few places with where you sort of resonate well and you are able to understand things fast, right? For example, for me, it has been the likes of Messery, right, as a destination platform, a bit of DCX Learn, a bit of A16Z, right, like their crypto content, and that sort of has been serving well for me. And then at times I would also pick up a podcast here and there with Naval or someone else who are always sort of building or sharing a great perspective on the long term future of crypto, right? And then I think so those sort of podcasts, those kind of people sort of provide you a long term view, and then you have these sort of daily reads, right, with Messery, with DCX Learn, with A16Z, which provide you with the recent updates in this space, right? I think it is what is also important is to sort of just always take 100-foot view, uh, and just maybe follow like one good project in each space rather than trying to be everywhere, right? So like follow a one good NFT project, follow one good protocol like Matic or Ethereum, right? Follow one good protocol or decentralized exchange in the DeFi space, right? And then sort of understand what they are doing, how they are doing things, right? It will give you a sense of what kind of evolutions are happening in this space. Really helps you to cut down noise and then focus and actually absorb, right? When there is so much happening in this space.
Got it. Very helpful. Lastly, I think let's probably wrap it up with one, two last questions from the audience. Do you think StockTwits is a good place for crypto news? Do you follow StockTwits often?
StockTwits is something that I'm not familiar with. So
Basically, Twitter.
it's more of a social this thing. Yeah, I'm checking as
Reddit.
we speak actually.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think yeah. So I think there are a lot of platforms who are now trying to solve for the social layer in crypto, right? Or social layer of crypto investing, right? I personally use a couple of them as well. Um, I might not be able to sort of comment specifically on StockTwits because I've not been a user, but I think understanding how they are sort of curating this content, and how are they showing top tweets, how are they showing top videos, how are they showing top tweets or top Reddit streams to you, I think that might sort of help you understand how strong their algorithms are, and then potentially vet whether the content is relevant or not. But specifics to StockTwits, I won't be able to comment.
And lastly, I think there's a question on is there still a price difference between Indian and international exchange? I don't see it as a user, but probably Minal can answer this better. Are there people who are purchasing tokens and moving it to an international exchange, and how do you plan to tackle that?
No, so I think yes, there are some differences at times. There are some differences, and that is primarily because crypto INR or Bitcoin INR prices are determined by the local demand and supply rather than the global demand and supply. And if you look at India as a country, for the last 1.5 years, we have been net buying more, right? Most of the Indians are getting into crypto and buying for the first time, and hence as a country, we have been buying more, which is where our BTC INR, USDT INR prices are at a slightly premium as compared to BTC USDT or USDT USD because of the net higher local demand, right? And I think in terms of moving money outside, I think, yeah, I mean, a lot of Indian users use sort of, a combination of global exchanges and CoinDCX or the likes of other Indian exchanges. So they don't see a challenge. I think what will be more important is to see how regulation folds and how do we sort of, the entire interplay between money movement to international to national sort of plays out.
Thank you so much, Manal. I think this has been super, super insightful, and it was almost like a rapid fire. Sorry for the last 15, 20 minutes. We've been at it for a long time now. I personally learned a lot. Thank you so much for taking out time today and sharing all of this information with us. Sandeep, any last questions from our side?
We are good. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks. We have been bang on time. So thank you so much for that stuff. And then it was a great session.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And stay tuned. We'll have more coming in up. And I'll be sharing those details with you. What is next in the box. Yeah. Thanks, Yash. Thanks, Minal.
Thanks, everyone.